these are my friends. Come along with me, see how the story ends.
What's up, all you professional hippies out there? Welcome back to another episode of Professional Hippies. Hey, today we have a very fun guy joining us. Eliah, I don't know if anyone's ever given you that intro, but that pun is indeed well intended. Today we have Eliah Thanhauser, co-founder and CEO of North Spore. You're a budding mycologist or somebody that's interested in medicinal mushrooms, products, the things that come along with the business world. One of the reasons why we reached out to Eliah is, one, I've been using their products, and I thought it was super cool what I've gotten into, and we can talk about that more in depth on the show. But two, marrying kind of a passion, learning more about how this business came to be for you. It's like almost too good to be true. You built a business on something you love, and it makes money, and it provides opportunity, and it gives back to the world. Like, what a interesting story, and I'm super excited to get to pick your brain. Hopefully, for all of you that are listening, you get to take away some nuggets of wisdom, also some inspiration, and maybe just learn about your new favorite hobby that you never knew would be interesting to you. So, Eliah, how are you doing, brother? And welcome to the show.
I'm great. Thanks a lot, Colton. I'm really excited to be here with you and Dylan and chat about mushrooms and just the world. But yeah, I'm doing great.
We're excited to talk about mushrooms too, buddy. And by the way, I wanted to tell you this live. Using your goods, I got my very first, second, third, and maybe fourth flush of mushrooms. So personally,
that's awesome.
I'm pretty stoked on you guys right now. So
Cool.
I've been getting a picture like every week. You know, it keeps going.
That's great.
Eliah, when was your first? Are they called batches? When was your first harvest? Your first flush?
I'd say I played around a little bit as like a hobbyist, but we started North Spore in the spring of 2014, and we started growing oyster mushrooms on straw, and our first harvest was probably early summer 2014, and we immediately started harvesting them and bringing them to restaurants to try to sell them. Though I will say, I don't remember the exact date, but two friends from college got married in September of 2014, and we had finally just like really ramped up our production, but we didn't have very good temperature control in our grow room, and we didn't even have that many customers yet, and all our mushrooms fruited at once. And this wedding was it was fun. It was at a summer camp, and we all kind of made meals together, and it was like just a big party, everyone hanging out for 3 days, and everyone brought some food or something to contribute. And I brought like 200 pounds of oyster mushrooms because we just had all these mushrooms fruiting at once, and we didn't have enough customers for them. And I was like, well, I might as well show up at this wedding with like an entire car full of mushrooms.
And thus it was born, the business. If you can't sell them, just give them out, man.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, you also did this with some college buddies, Matt and John.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm sure you've told us the genesis of your business maybe a couple million times. But for our listeners at home, if you want to make it a long story, but a long story short, like, how did this come to fruition with your buddies? And how do you guys still like each other? Because you run a business together. That's hard.
It's kind of amazing. I mean, our friendships have grown a lot. I mean, you guys run a business together and work together. And it seems like you have a very strong friendship still. But yeah, our friendship has actually gotten a lot deeper and grown. And I feel so thankful to be running my business with both of them. And I really appreciate their perspectives and ideas. And I think we lucked out on how good kind of a team we are together. We have really different strengths. We didn't plan that out, but it just happened to be that way. One of our accountants actually said was like blown away. She's like, I've done accounting for a lot of family businesses, a lot of regular businesses, and I am blown away by like your relationship and how good you guys are at working together. So I think we're definitely lucky, but it's important to us to kind of respect each other and think about the best things for the others. But yeah, so starting, we all went to college at College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor, Maine, which is kind of like the Hogwarts of colleges. It's a tiny school on the coast of the Atlantic. It's about 300 students right on the ocean. And John especially was really into mushrooms. He's our head mycologist, and he ended up going to grad school for mycology. But so we met at College of the Atlantic, became close friends, and then went our separate ways after college. John going to grad school for mycology, Matt worked in the wine industry and doing freelance photography for the New York Times, and I worked on boats and managed an organic farm. And a couple of years after that, we came back together. John was visiting on a break from grad school. We were at a wine bar, and John kind of was just pitching us on the idea of starting a mushroom farm. And it wasn't the first time I've sat around drinking wine with friends and talked about starting a business, but it was the first time it went somewhere. And it kind of just after that just snowballed, and just like we were motivated, and like from the very beginning just went all in. And it's amazing how much it's grown and how many incredible people have joined us on our team. And yeah, I feel super lucky that we had the right team, that we started at the time that we started, that we were able to be so successful. I mean, the lucky part is I don't think there's ever been a better time to start a mushroom company in the history of the United States as when we started. So that was lucky. We were paddling for a wave before it was even visible.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you caught that it kind of the perfect time. And just for reference, because, I help people understand, like, you guys are a full-fledged business. This is kind of the thing we talk about. We spoke a little about the first time we all were talking together. It's like you are kind of past the toddler walking. Like, you guys are trying to figure out how to kind of run and sprint here. Like, you have how many employees do you have now?
We're about 65 right now. Yeah, so we've definitely, we've scaled a lot, grown a lot. I would say at this point, we're a leader in mushroom cultivation and medicinal mushroom products in the U.S. One of the things that's really rare about what we do is we're completely vertically integrated. So we start at the very beginning with our products all the way to the end. There are products we have that we work with other manufacturers, but all our spawn, all our grow kits, all our substrates, we make in-house. And from the early stage of genetics, like first generation, all the way to the products we're selling, we make in our own labs, and we're completely vertically integrated. So that's rare.
That's rare for the product to be like, especially for what you do. That's rare for it to come from somewhere else and you get the product mid-growth. And then
a lot of companies do part of the process. Like a lot of mushroom farms actually buy in blocks, which is like an already inoculated substrate, or some buy in spawn, which is, like the seed equivalent for mushrooms. But even from the beginning, when we were a fresh mushroom farm, we always created our own spawn. We created our own cultures, our own masters. So we're curating our own genetics, producing our own spawn, producing our own substrate, fruiting our own mushrooms. We're not a fresh mushroom farm anymore. We're just producing growing supplies, growing equipment, medicinal mushroom products. But yeah, being totally vertically integrated like we are is really rare. I mean, we have mycologists on our team, we have video producers on our team, marketing people, researchers. So we're definitely very robust in the way we interact with the world and what we do within North Spore. And I think being a resource for mushroom growing and medicinal mushroom knowledge is our strength. And we really try to encompass the whole world of fungi in that way and not just focus on a narrow path.
So one of the things, I have two things that come up here, Eliah. One, if someone at home is not familiar with these terms, right, can you just give kind of a brief overview of maybe a mushroom's journey through inoculation, what substrate is, kind of these second nature terms to you? Like if someone is interested in getting into this, why are you guys not doing kind of the fresh mushroom route? You're doing the supplies and kind of, dig on what do some of those terms mean essentially? Right?
Yeah, totally. Well, so North Spore's mission is to make the world of mushrooms accessible to all through collaboration and innovation. And so our mission is to help other people grow mushrooms, help other people use medicinal mushrooms, help other people learn about mushrooms. So that's why we started as a fresh mushroom farm, but then felt that the best way to support more people doing that was to help them grow mushrooms, help them interact with fungi in the way that they want to interact with fungi. And so the process, there's a lot of different processes, but I'll start kind of fundamentally. So a substrate is basically any organic material that fungi grow off of. And then spawn is kind of the seed equivalent for mushrooms. But in a commercial setting, mushrooms are actually not grown from spores. A lot of people do grow mushrooms from spores, which is the sexual reproductive part of a mushroom, but they actually do it through cloning. So like apples, for instance, are all cultivated through grafting because I'm getting confused. Apples and apple seeds are not true to seeds. So when you grow a seed from an apple, it will not necessarily, and almost never would be what the parent tree was. And so if you want a tree lineage to stay the same, you have to take a cutting and graft it to another rootstock or another tree. So the same is true with fungi. And so we culture mushrooms. So we're taking mushroom tissue, mycelial tissue, and growing that out in a lab, and then growing that to different generations. So that starts on a slant and then goes to a petri dish. Then it goes to a master bag, which is grown on grain, and then it will go to spawn. And then that can be mixed into another substrate where the mushrooms will actually grow off of. So there's a lot of steps to the process, but we actually sell each step of the process. So there's people that really want to create their own spawn. So we sell them cultures. And they can do that. Or some people want to start at the master stage and they buy masters from us and create their own spawn. Some people don't want to deal with any of that, but do want to grow mushrooms and they buy blocks from us or a fruiting kit. And those things are already ready to fruit. They're the colonized substrate with the cells in them. Yeah, most of all those things are just taking mushroom cells and introducing them to a grain or a different substrate at different stages, and then they can be put on another substrate and then eventually fruited out when they're at that stage. I feel like that was a little long-winded and not as direct, but
I also feel it's appropriate because of the journey that is growing mushrooms. You can make it as simple as you want it to be. Like, you guys, I'm not sure if it's you or a competitor. Do you have the all-in-one bags where you're essentially inoculating?
We're working on those right now, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't currently, but we will soon. But yeah, so an all-in-one bag is basically just needs the spores or mycelium or spawn introduced, and it's ready to grow.
Yeah. So you kind of have a version of that where you could, the biggest drawback I've seen from that is, your yields, right? Because everything's not really optimal. It's kind of the mushroom finding a way to exist in spite of versus encouraged by its environment. So you can kind of reduce it to where it's real simple. You're spreading some seeds just like you would that fucked up apple tree, and stuff will grow.
Yeah.
But if you want it to be kind of precise or maximize your yields, accentuate some genetics or etc., you kind of get into more of the nuances. And just to speak to that, because I thought I totally did fuck up spawn to bulk on one of my boxes, and a competing mold got in there, was moving and grooving, and I'm like, all right, this guy's done, right? So just reading online, doing research, went and buried it under a bush. And when we got back from a music festival, it rained, and I thought about it, and I was like, I wonder. And I went over there, and sure enough, this dude had fruited, and I was blown away that it found a way, right?
Yeah.
So it can really be as complicated, or sometimes even when you think you screwed it up, you just kind of let nature do its thing. It'll find a way. So I don't think it was long-winded. It just kind of speaks to the nature of mushrooms. It could be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it, right?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. So, Dylan, did you have anything you want to stack on that?
No, I was just thinking, because you were talking about the different stages, just through that you had the processes, and I just thought that was awesome, because I'd be the guy that was like, just give me what it is so I can put it in the box, water it, and I get what I want. Whereas Colton, it's just funny. He's like, I want to be the god of this thing. I want to start from the beginning, and every step through it, I control it. It's just funny to hear the different.
You get to be a little fungi god, right? And so, one of the things I was super excited to get your insight on, Eliah, is around, I don't want to say any names, but some of these companies that offer mushroom teas, elixirs, etc. And some of the information I was learning about that is, and granted, I'm still an amateur here, only a couple flushes in. So we have like the inoculation, the spawn to bulk. Colonization is once it has moved past inoculation, spawn to bulk, it is taken over the whole cake, right?
Yeah, colonization is the process of cell division where you first introduce a few mushroom cells into a grain or into substrate, and those cells are dividing and spreading throughout that substrate, and that's called colonization.
Okay, so colonization is happening right before, like once you're at peak colonization, then you introduce fresh air conditions or fresh air exchange, and that fresh air is what's going to cause the fruit to come up out of the mycelium. Yeah,
so there's a lot of triggers that kind of promote the fruiting body to fruit, but having the substrate be fully colonized is one of them, as well as the conditions of the air that you're introducing.
Okay, so
but oxygen definitely helps fruiting.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to bring that in is kind of set the stage for understanding how some of these, mushroom tea, elixir type drinks, right, performance enhancing, nootropic, etc. Some of them, I've subscribed to so many of these newsletters because just being curious. Some of them are talking down some of the more widely promoted ones because they're, it seems to be, if I'm understanding this correctly, just taking the colonization.
The mycelium.
so they're using the mycelium as opposed to the fruiting bodies.
Exactly.
Can you kind of speak to that? Maybe illustrate that a little bit more. Why that'd be important?
Yeah. So there's so many mushroom products on the market now, and like anything, there's a lot of differing quality out there. And I think a lot of these companies also, they didn't, like, one of the strengths of North Spore is we started as a mushroom farm. We understand mushrooms, we understand quality, and a lot of these other businesses didn't necessarily start with that beginning and kind of just have one product line and may not be that involved in the production of it even themselves. But so the mycelium is kind of the vegetative cellular growth of a mushroom. So if you looked at a substrate or even into the soil, it would be all the white cells kind of growing within the substrate. And then what we consider a mushroom, typically has a cap and a stem, though there's many, many different kinds, is the fruiting body, which can release spores, which can sexually reproduce and produce more mushrooms. But mushrooms can also spread through mycelial growth, and that is the way that we produce spawn and our products. So kind of historically and traditionally, humans have only eaten and used for food or medicine the fruiting bodies of mushrooms. They really haven't been using the mycelial cells. But a lot of products today don't kind of wait to go to the stage of fruiting bodies. They're just harvesting those mycelial cells off of a grain or another substrate and making products off of that, whether it be a medicinal capsule or a tincture or a mushroom coffee. And I feel that supplements and tinctures and medicinal products derived from fruiting bodies are far, far superior than mycelial-based products. The mycelial-based products are going to have a high concentration of just the grain that they're grown off of. I've seen some analysis of different products, and it's like, oh, if it was grown on rice, even though, you're trying to get a lion's mane supplement, and, if it was primarily grown on rice, the analysis might show that it is mostly rice is what you're getting. There's not as much lion's mane in there. So it's somewhat controversial, I would say, about whether mycelium has what the medicinal properties are compared to a fruiting body, but I believe that fruiting body based products are far superior.
Is that
okay?
Do you think that's like? Do you think they really think? When you're saying it's controversial, do you really think that the people that are doing that are getting the medicinal portion of what they're trying to get out of the medicinal, or do you think it's really more of a business decision? They're like, we can pump this out.
I think those things get pretty tied together. People start to believe what they say, and they start to believe what makes sense. Undoubtedly, it is much cheaper and much easier to produce products off of mycelium and not have to go to the fruiting stage. So from a business standpoint, it definitely makes sense because you can produce products that are faster and cheaper and easier to produce. Some people, whether they genuinely believe that that's a better product or not, I can't really speak to that exactly, but there are definitely business reasons why they might try to convince people that that's a better product.
For a lot of people that don't understand, I feel like that's like saying I'm going to smoke the leaf of a marijuana plant instead of the actual fruit of it.
Yeah.
They're like, it's the same thing. We'll get it. We'll get the same concentration.
Good analogy, for sure.
That is a great analogy, actually. Yeah. Because I'm curious, if you were to take, let's say any kind of mushroom that bruises. So I'm trying to look for an analogous to say psilocybin, right? So the bruising and it turning blue is what the psilocybe interacting with oxygen in the air, and that's creating that reaction, right? So all of that psilocybin essentially is coming from the mycelia into the fruiting body. Is that correct?
I am not actually totally sure on that. I would imagine a lot of it's being produced in the fruiting body itself. But
because I'm looking to correlate that to, say, lion's mane or these other medicinal mushrooms. Like, is that reaction occurring in the fruiting body?
It depends on the species too. Like the philosopher's stone, like the psychoactive part of that fungi is actually the sclerotia, which is a different part of the organism, and then like a typical psilocybin mushroom, most people are taking the cap or the mushroom itself, and I think that there's far less potency in the mycelium than in the fruiting body itself. I don't know exactly how that's produced and whether it's pulling some from the mycelium, but I could look into that.
I mean, I'm looking into that. I was just curious because it would make a strong case as to, like, when you look, for anyone that's listening to this at home, like, I highly encourage you to look up like a fully colonized mushroom cake. It didn't strike me, Eliah, until you were saying this, but like all these cells dividing and these fingers that stretch out and these veins. I mean, it's like, it's a whole ass organism that takes over wherever it's at. It's like really kind of trippy to look at. You go from dirt to this whole organism just taking up this space, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how fast they can grow, and they can also, when they colonize a substrate, they can transfer water and nutrients and toxins from one part of the organism to another, it's pretty cool how, mycelium and fungi have the ability to do that.
Does it produce waste? Like when you're reflushing the cake, is that like...
Yeah, mushrooms produce something called exudate, which is kind of a waste from the bioactivity of the fungi.
And is that like collecting within the cake, or is that like pushed on the top or the bottom? It
often will push it off to the side, depending on what it's grown in, to kind of remove that a bit. Or so sometimes you'll see it if there's kind of like a brown liquid on the top or something, that is probably the exudate, and it's just kind of moving it from one place to another.
I love seeing Dylan's mind get blown.
I've never heard of a plant producing a waste. I mean, you think of pollen or something, of course.
But it's not a plant. It's not a plant.
Yeah, it's not a plant. It's an organism. So that's just so crazy to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I mean, not all, some of it is also nutrients or toxins that are not created but are present. That like for example, a plant, if they have some toxicity in the soil, they will often take that up, put it into their leaves, and then drop their leaves to try to remove that from, as like, I mean, we as mammals, we have a way that we're all pretty aware of to get rid of toxins, whether that's vomiting, pissing, pooping, sweating.
Oh no, man! I love fluoride in my water. I can't get enough of it.
But
like a splinter in your finger, and it pushes it out. It just gets rid of it.
But plants and fungi both have their own mechanisms for doing that as well.
Dude, that's so cool. But the reason I asked that is because I went to rehydrate the cake, and I left it in the tub overnight after like heavily misting it or doing it for 10-15 minutes, and there was like all this like yellow and brown that came out from around of it, and I was wondering, I'm like, is that mushroom poop? Did I just get pooped on by my mushrooms? Is Is that what just happened?
I could definitely see you being like, is it?
well, so pivoting a little bit away from like more of maybe something that isn't exactly in your zone of genius, right? Like you didn't go to post grad for mycology, but pivoting a little bit more inside the internals of the business side of things, what kind of complexity have you seen develop in, let's say, the later stages of the business? Maybe giving a little pretense to the beginning. You said you guys were all in from the jump, right? And I think the first time we all spoke, you mentioned it was kind of like a scrappy feel in the early days, right? So maybe let's start there instead of like the complexity. Like, what were you doing in the scrappy days of the business where it's all hands on deck? Like, take me back to that time, and what were some of the things coming alive for you when you think about the early days of the business?
Yeah, so when we started, you know, there weren't even that many mushroom farms at farmers markets. There were, you know, not very many mushroom companies online. I mean, there was a couple pioneer mushroom companies that probably started in the 70s and 80s that had mail order catalogs, but we were even kind of a pioneer to really take mushrooms and mushroom growing supplies online. But in the very beginning, we didn't even do that. So we started shredding straw with like a Home Depot garden mulcher that didn't work super well. We were finding free buckets to grow in from a local mead company in a sandwich shop. We had to install a sink because we were very in the beginning. We had just cold water, and we had a garden hose and a 55-gallon drum in the driveway that we were washing things in. So it was pretty scrappy. Our lab was a 4x4 Mylar grow tent for cannabis. So it was like, it was tiny. John would have to sit in there in his underwear because it got so hot. So he'd be doing lab work in front of a little flow hood in this tiny little tent. And yes, so, and yeah, there just weren't very many people doing that at that time. Now there's even just so many people with home labs excited about, you know, even creating their own genetics and spawn and culturing things. There's so many people growing mushrooms in their gardens. It's so easy to grow mushrooms in their gardens. People are really excited about psychedelics. It's just like completely transformed in 10 years. It's amazing. I mean, I would say if, you know, maybe if you went to Whole Foods 10 years ago, I could imagine maybe you'd find one or two mushroom supplements or products in the like health and wellness section. Now, if you go to a CVS, I bet you can find 40 or 50 in a CVS, you know, like it's probably hundreds at Whole Foods, and online it's even more. And so now North Spore, we just moved into a new building that we'd been building out and renovating for the last 2.5 years. We moved into that this past October, and that includes 6 state-of-the-art labs for doing genetic work and processing substrates and producing spawn. We have automation in our substrate bagging. We even on our fulfillment for shipping out orders, we have automation now. We have a vertical lift module, which is like a giant refrigerated vending machine where we keep all our living products. And when an order comes through, it brings you the order that you need to send that out. And yeah, as I said,
I can really appreciate how excited you are about that, by the way. I just want to highlight that moment. I saw the glint in your eye, and I could tell that was a big milestone for you, especially.
It's cool to be growing and having like to bring it to the next level of quality and equipment, especially with kind of the scrappy beginnings where we came from, where in the beginning, like I made pretty much all the equipment we used, and it was really, really scrappy. And now having like really high tech, really nice equipment and labs is really great.
How many Home Depot trips did you have to make?
Oh, so many.
Imagine, right?
I mean, I would say that, we've spent more at Home Depot in the first couple of years than we had for gross revenue.
I could only imagine that. Like this tube,
Yeah.
that bucket. Make that work.
Don't forget to strip down your underwear.
That's awesome.
So with the wave that's hitting now with psychedelics, I mean, I wanted to stay away from it, but you kind of can't, right? It's like, hey, here is clearly a lot of attention coming into the psychedelic realm, which does directly benefit your company, but there's also directly a conflict of interest and this like legal ethos you have to navigate. So what's it been like on the business side of things where you're like trying to define if you can put support behind that, or the business decision to say, hey, we're only really medicinal? Like, how do you navigate these waters that you're finding yourselves in?
It definitely is tricky. But fundamentally, North Spore is about being a mushroom resource for all things fungi and for all people wanting to interact with fungi, and trying to figure out what kind of the future of North Spore looks like. I think we're really interested in having, I'm definitely for the legalization of psychedelics, but I don't want to be a psychedelic pharmaceutical company or producing, I believe in the decentralization of psychedelics for people to still be able to produce their own medicine, produce their own mushrooms, kind of interact with that in an unregulated way, in the way that they want to be able to interact with it. So as we are a resource for growing mushrooms now, I think we'll continue to be a resource for mushroom growing of all kinds into the future. I could see us, as things become legalized, potentially having some medicinal products. Though, again, we want to enable other people to be able to produce things on their own, interact with fungi on their own, and have the experiences they want for themselves. So it's definitely tricky to navigate, but I feel like we can navigate it in the way that we're very well grounded in who we are and what we do. And if it pertains to helping people grow mushrooms and interact with mushrooms and learn about mushrooms, North Spore is going to keep supporting that.
Was that part of the business decision of going towards the direction you're doing, with more of, we want to help with the process of being like, hey, we don't want to tell you what to grow, we just want to help you grow it? And so, depending on the strains, they might vary a little bit differently, but pretty much here's how you do it, like for anything, and here's the supplies to do it. Is that kind of the reason why that business decision to go more that way, or did it just seem like to get it on a bigger scale? Cultivating for more organic, it would be a little bit harder.
Yeah, it was multiple things. I would say psychedelics didn't necessarily guide us into that realm, though just wanting to support people in general growing mushrooms, it did seem like the best way to have a broad support for them doing that, especially as things become legalized. Though I will say we also had a major pivot at the beginning of the pandemic. Were already very focused on growing supplies and spawn and grow kits and helping people grow mushrooms. But about 30% of our sales were still fresh mushrooms. We were doing about 8 farmers markets a week. We were selling to about 75 restaurants every week. And we had a fresh mushroom farm. At the beginning of the pandemic, after 1 week, our restaurant sales got cut in half. And then 2 weeks in, we probably had about one customer. So that pretty much just like disappeared. And so we had known that we wanted to kind of focus more on growing supplies and helping people grow mushrooms and medicinals and having a broader reach and focusing on education. But we were still very involved in producing fresh mushrooms. And the timing of the pandemic kind of forced us to pivot faster than we probably would have done otherwise.
With the pandemic and everyone, obviously going into chaos during that time, right? A lot of people I know, and there's tons of more research that came out with people being more self-reliant on things, right? Like not having to rely so much on things for electricity, going solar. You know how that goes. So did you see a boost in that as well when people start doing more research on fungi and mushrooms and being like, oh, I could use, instead of going to CVS to get something medicinally, I can use this to take care of this skin problem, or I can use this to take care of a stomach issue, or whatever it might be. And so I feel like that would be a growing business in that space of going, oh, I can get all these different mushrooms, having a little garden, and then if I ever needed anything, I don't have to rely on the world in order to take care of myself.
Definitely. That's very insightful. And we did notice that.
Interesting.
There's many terrible things about the pandemic, but I think there's some positive things that have come from it as well. And I think people became a lot more interested in health during the pandemic. So people, like you say, were doing more research about health or wanted to, have a more healthy lifestyle. So they're interested in using medicinal mushrooms, taking medicinal mushroom supplements, and people wanted, the grocery stores didn't even have that much food at times.
Yeah.
There's some instability, as well as people were at home and had time on their hands. So a lot of people got more interested in growing their own food and gardening, which I think still carries over to this day, which I think is awesome. I think people growing their own food, understanding how food is grown, feeling how rewarding it is to grow your own food is awesome. And I think the pandemic did push people to do that. So we saw more and more people buying mushroom growing supplies. We saw more people gardening, more people getting excited to garden with mushrooms, and that's just continued. So yeah, that was a astute observation you made, but we definitely noticed that.
And one of the things that I've seen you guys really make a push for, it seems like anyway, from an outside observation, is just arming people with the resources around information. Whether it's working with your products or not, you could even feel when I brought up a competitor all in one bag, like there was no sticky energy in you. It feels as if you're as supportive of uplifting the mission and the community of, self-reliance as much as anything else. So is that an intentional thing by you guys? Is like, hey, use us if you want us, we're here, but like, here's a bunch of information because we just want you to kind of do your thing and grow your own food, be self-reliant, and kind of explore what this world is all about.
Definitely. I mean, I think, in many species of mushrooms are not harder to grow than tomatoes, but fewer people grow them than tomatoes, and mostly that's because of education. So I think education is really important. Like there is some old stigma around mushrooms. There's like kind of some mysticism and misinformation, and people feel intimidated by mushrooms, but they don't have to. And education is really important to us because people can grow mushrooms. They can have incredible journeys with fungi, and be fulfilled and rewarded with those experiences. And giving them the information and the resources to do that is really our mission. And I think basically it all does start with education. So we do try to produce a lot of educational material. I want to keep doing that, create more videos, more classes, more blog posts. But I kind of, from a business standpoint, I mean, when you put it into a business context, I believe that North Spore's value proposition is the confidence to grow mushrooms successfully, which now it can even be broader, like medicinal mushrooms don't fall into that. But that confidence not only comes from knowing you're using really good products and quality materials, but having the education and knowledge to be able to do that. And so, providing free education is definitely very important to our mission to help people be able to grow and interact with mushrooms.
I think you should have a master class. You know how they put a master class almost out for anything nowadays?
Yeah.
I feel like the mushroom one would be a super important one. Or even fungi. To be able to grow that. I wanted to, because I know we're probably coming up soon, but you said you were working on a project just to kind of steer away a little bit from the mushrooms and conversation. You were working on a project for the ocean cleanup or something, right? And that's just a huge deal right now. I just wanted to point that out because I've been following the ocean cleanup, the big machine out there that kid created.
Yeah.
Or now he's not a kid anymore. Yeah, not a kid anymore. He's a grown man, but when he created it, he was a pretty young lad. So just wanted to hear about the project that you're working on for that a little bit.
Yeah, the oceans are super important to me. I love sailing. I love surfing. I love being near the ocean. And one of the projects I'm most excited about right now is called Myco Buoys. And we're working with a friend and researcher, Sue Van Hook, who used to be the head mycologist at Ecovative. And we're helping her produce mycelium-based buoys that can, because, whether it's dock floats or lobster buoys or mooring buoys, there's just so many types of flotation in the ocean that are plastic or they're styrofoam. And those are, eventually breaking down, contributing to plastic in the ocean. There's plastic in the ocean everywhere at this point. But she's prototyped some really incredible buoys that can replace plastic and styrofoam buoys, and they're made of 100% organic materials that when their useful life is done, and if they break off in a storm, all that's there is organic substrates and mushroom mycelium, and it will cause no damage to the ocean at all. And I think there's just so much plastic and styrofoam that is being used for flotation in the ocean that has the potential to be removed.
Is it the same idea of using like a hemp to create things or paper or material? It's kind of the same idea.
Yeah. Oh, completely. I mean, like, a hemp cloth instead of a polyester, which is a plastic base. So yeah, it's just using a natural substrate and material that can fully break down and leave no harmful byproducts when it breaks down. So exactly.
That's that's fascinating, right? Like, I never would have thought that, especially for like a buoy or anything. You see the little crab cages out there, right?
Yeah.
And there's just a thing floating on water. And so many people think, oh, it's just going to stay there, but there's the huge garbage piles full of them out there, right?
Right.
I'm just curious how far along she's on that process. That's pretty.
Yeah. So she's in the small scale production, trialing, prototyping stage. There's still, it's really in the research stage. But I think there's a lot of promise, and some of the prototypes she's already come up with are amazing. When I see them, I'm very impressed. You like hold it next to a styrofoam buoy and you're like, wow, this is made out of mushroom mycelium. That's amazing.
Could you imagine just you're out there and you finally come across your buoy and you just see a mushroom coming out. You're like, wait a minute. That's not a saltwater taffy.
Yeah. Hopefully they're designed. They shouldn't ever actually fruiting bodies, but that could happen maybe.
Yeah.
Hey man,
Evolution,
there's innovation
man.
in every field, right?
It's just evolution out of it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is it just now, like you said she's creating, is it more just down to like business costs, just getting everything brought down now? So
we're not even in that. We're not to that stage yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be like kind of the economic viability of it. We're not even there yet. She's still just working on coming up with a functional product with prototypes, with different designs, different formulations, and trialing them. She has at least a dozen oyster farmers trialing buoys, a couple of lobstermen. So just getting it in the ocean, getting it being used, and figuring out where there's problems, things that she can improve. Yeah.
That'd be so cool if, like, imagine she got to the point of making nets out of mycelium, right? And then those things get lost. They can just organically decompose. And then who knows? I mean, like, you get to the point where, like, even that could spread stuff to other beaches around the world. You know, that'd be kind of cool. Just if those get dropped everywhere else. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
All right, Dylan. Well, let's bring her in. Hey, Eliah, if people want to connect with you, North Spore, what's the best avenue to do that?
They can go to our website, northspore.com, follow us on social, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, reach out to our customer service. But our website is a great starting point.
Beautiful. And I can personally be an advocate that, yeah, I mean, what inspired reaching out to you in the first place was the quality and just the resources available from North Spore. So you guys do an amazing job. Just want to reflect that back to you. Super stoked that you decided to spare some time and come on our platform and share with our audience. So if you guys have any questions that you want to direct back to us, feel free to reach out to us, shoot us a DM wherever you're seeing this or hear this. Leave us a review. That helps us help people like Eliah and North Spore, all the other amazing people that are coming on this platform to spread their medicine with you guys. And so, Dylan, did I miss anything?
No, share with your loved ones, share with your friends, share it with your coworkers, whatever it is. Just give us a follow, like, and thank you again, Eliah, for coming on. It was awesome today.
Yeah, thank you both so much. It was a great conversation. And one more thing I'll say, our YouTube channel does have a ton of free informational videos for growing mushrooms, about medicinal mushrooms, using mushrooms. So I encourage people to check out North Spore on YouTube and learn more.
And we'll be dropping that link too and everything. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Colton learned. Like, it's been growing like crazy.
All right. We love you guys. We'll see you next week.